Welcome, everyone. I'm so excited to have you all here today to join us in the conclusion of the tech sprint on combating digital payments fraud in West Africa. As I hope you know, and the reason that you're all here, the Alliance for Innovative Regulation has been hosting a virtual tech sprint this week focused on detecting and combating payment fraud in West Africa. And this event has brought together a diverse range of stakeholders, including technology companies, consumer protection agencies, payment service providers, innovators, regulators, subject matter experts, and those that are a number of those things all together to collaborate and create solutions. And the teams have been working through this week on their solutions and their demos, which we are really excited to be showing you today. So the focus of the fraud tech sprint was across a number of use cases. Earlier in the year, we spent some time in West Africa and with key stakeholders just working through the real sticky issues that we're currently facing within the fraud space in West Africa. So the ones that came out were consumer education and awareness, real-time transaction monitoring, identity data management, centralized fraud intelligence sharing, market monitoring, and gender disaggregated data. So the teams have been working on these use cases this week, and we've also been holding a conference alongside, which I hope some of you have managed to get along to. We've had some incredible speakers this week, and they have been talking around some of these subjects and really thinking about how we move forward with this. Before I get into the bones of this, I have got a few housekeepings. So the session is being recorded and will be made accessible on AIR's website. So if you could keep all your devices muted and cameras off while people are speaking, that would be great. We have a packed agenda today. It's quite a long session. We will be taking a couple of breaks in the middle so that you can have a little bit of a break away from the screen. And we really appreciate you staying with us to get today. So first up, we'll be hearing from Innocent Isichei, who is a founder, board member, senior advisor on Africa tech policy. We'll also move on to the demos from the team. So we've got 6 teams demoing today. I'm very excited to have them here. The demos are recorded, but the teams will be on live to answer questions from the judges. We'll also replay our keynote from earlier this week. Aisha Ahmed, former Deputy Governor of the CBN, spoke very passionately earlier this week around the challenges. So we're going to replay that during one of the breaks. So if you missed that, then it'll give you another opportunity to hear that. Whilst the judges are deliberating, we're going to have a conversation with Archie Hesse, who's CEO of GIPS. And I'll be talking to him about what he thinks the key actions are that are needed to move forward on the fight against fraud. And then finally, we'll be coming back to award our sprinters and hear from the judges' deliberations. So as I say, there'll be a couple of breaks in the middle, and thank you for staying with us. So without further delay, I'd love to welcome Innocent Isichei, who, as I say, is a policy expert. He's worked for the CBN. He has a wealth of knowledge in the payment space, particularly in West Africa. So I'm really excited to hear from Innocent today. We've discussed many things over this week, as I've mentioned, such as building gender sensitive infrastructures for digital payment fraud. We've seen showcases of technology. We've heard challenges around complaints and redress. And finally, we've heard about counteracting digital payment fraud through RegTech and SubTech. So I'm going to pass over to Innocent in just a few minutes, but I just wanted to highlight a couple of the points that we've heard this week, and Innocent's going to pick up on for us in the next few moments. So we know that fraud is one of the greatest financial challenges of our time. Everyone's been saying that this week. It won't be a surprise to anyone that anyone who works in the financial industry is grappling with this challenge right now globally. It's very harmful, not only financially, but very rarely talked about psychologically, leaving lasting impact on people, and particularly those that are most vulnerable. We know that collaboration and frameworks to foster collaboration are essential. Cross-sectional, transparently managed, with co-creation mindset. That's been a big theme this week. Deeper consumer awareness and rights education, how that underpins the efforts from the industry and the regulators. We need to help the consumers understand their rights and better be able to deal with the financial challenges. We've also talked about women in particular facing unique risks in digital finance. And there is a huge lack of gender-specific data. And this really limits the ability of policymakers and financial institutes to design targeted fraud strategies. And then finally, and I think one that I know Innocent is going to pick up on, is around centralised fraud reporting, data and intelligence sharing. That really being the golden nugget that's come up many times this week, and the thing that we think will help to bring us closer to a safer financial system. So I have spoken enough. I am going to pass over to Innocent now. So Innocent, if you could give us your thoughts around kind of what you want to see in terms of the action needed to combat digital payment fraud, and share some of your experiences of what is and isn't working at the moment. Over
Thanks,
to you.
Shelley. Thank you for the kind invitation, and it was great listening to some of the sessions, the topics that came up with some of the sessions. But I think one thing that struck out for me was really this whole idea of having a central repository of fraud-related incidents. And I think it's come up in conversations, not just at the event that are just taking place, but in previous events of which we managed to co-host, bringing regulators and practitioners within the financial system. And the reason why it's important, because what you then find out sometimes is perpetrators of financial fraud, maybe who are operating within one system, other financial players are not aware of the existence of some of the activities that are taking place. So when you have the central repository of fraud-related incident that's available to all of them, it helps to make sure that they're able to develop, build effective guardrails to prevent these fraudulent actors from coming to within their own financial system. I think also the central repository is also very helpful in terms of gathering data and relevant insights from the perspective of the regulator, and even for law enforcement in being able to, better prevent or understand the patterns of fraudulent-related activities with a view to combating them. So it's something I think is so essential that we should, I think a lot of attention has to be paid to it. Within our own experience working with payment firms, engaging with regulators, another thing that we also see is the idea of really making sure you have strong KYCs, KYC onboarding measures. And the reason why is when you have lax KYC rules, it makes it easy, or you make your system vulnerable for bad actors to come into it. And it's much harder to actually, deal with bad actors once they've come into your system. And the worst part about it is that they not only affect your system, could affect your system. They could, and particularly within interoperable payment systems, they could have effects on other financial institutions. So it's very, very, very important. Engaging, I like 2 days ago, I engaged with a major payments company, and it came up that, look, that is one aspect that all stakeholders have to sort of work on, in making sure that you have effective KYC onboarding measures. I love this section you talked about with regards to gender disaggregated data. We've been working on looking at data on credit and access to finance. And what struck me was the fact that it wasn't disaggregated by gender. And when you look at fraud-related incidents, particularly within rural communities, you find that women to some degree are more exposed or are more vulnerable to this sort of fraudulent actors, maybe due to maybe lower literacy levels, particularly in rural communities. So I think it's something that I think stakeholders have to emphasize as you generate data, making sure you're able to have proper labels around gender and labels that are also relevant to other disadvantaged groups, because that's where you're able to design more effective tools to address some of the peculiar challenges that they face. Another important aspect which stood out for me in the conference was really the emphasis on advocacy. I think it's also very, very important. The sort of fraudulent schemes that you see keep evolving every day. So you can't stop at, when you feel that you've actually achieved your objective. It's a continuous effort by all stakeholders, regulators, payment service providers, other institutions that cater to addressing this challenge, making sure that, people are well aware, well equipped to actually work to prevent or protect themselves from being taken advantage of by fraudulent actors. We organized a workshop recently with over 100 women-owned businesses and working with one of the major payment service providers. And what stood out for me was the fact that, you had very low literacy levels, and which made them very vulnerable to fraudulent activities. So it came up to my mind that you can't stop on your advocacy efforts. You must continue to engage. And at least if we want to build a financial or payment system that people have very strong trust in, I think is really, really essential. And I'll end by talking about collaboration. One thing I've seen from my experience working with payment operators, working with regulators, as a former regulator myself, collaboration is very important. Regulators have a macro perspective, and they look at things from a broader perspective. And which sometimes payment service providers may not understand because they are thinking of the financial system as a whole. But for a payment service provider has useful information on micro level in terms of when they develop products, when they see user activities within their systems. And I think that effective collaboration would be very useful in developing solutions that could help to build a safer payment system, given the sort of strides we've seen that have been achieved in key markets, for example, in Nigeria. So I think those are some of the insights I've seen so far, and I want to thank you for setting up this really, really useful session, which was filled with a lot of insights. And I'd like to thank the team at Alliance for Innovative Regulation for putting this event together. Thanks, Shelley.
Thank you, Innocent. They really useful and very poignant comments there, and I think it is echoing what we're hearing from others. But also, I think something we talked about earlier when we met was there are steps that can be taken. There's very tangible things that we can do, and if we work together as an ecosystem and we collaborate and we bring people together in these types of forums and wider across the continent, that we can really make some headway in this space. So and that's been a standout for us at AIR, the amount of collaboration and the people that are leaning into these conversations as well. So thank you so much, Innocent, for sharing, and we look forward to you staying alongside us as we move forward in this program.
I certainly look forward to it. It's very engaging, and I really like the insights that have come out from the event in itself. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Okay, so following that, we're going to move into our demo day. As I say, there are 6 teams presenting today. They've been working hard over the week to finesse their solutions, to think about how it addresses the challenges that we shared in terms of the use cases, and working with our group of experts. So we've had a number of experts available all week who have been joining sessions, talking to the team, sharing their expertise, helping them finesse their pitches, and it's just been an incredible kind of collaborative event this week. As I mentioned, the demos are recorded. We recorded them with the teams yesterday just to avoid any problems with connectivity, as I'm sure some of you will experience. It can be quite difficult in some regions. So we pre-recorded some of the demos. So just to warn you, there are some demos where it looks like it cuts out and then starts again, and that's just because we've had connectivity issues. And we've pulled those videos together. But the teams did present their solutions in one go, and we've given them 7 minutes to share their insights and their solutions and how they came to those solutions. So they talk for around 7 minutes, and what we're going to do is in between each session, each demo, we're going to ask the judges to join us and spend around 6 minutes asking the team any clarification questions or asking them to elaborate on any part of their pitch that will help the judges to make a decision at the end. So that's going to be around 40 minutes. As I say, we'll have a little bit of a break and then around another 40 minutes. But it should go smoothly as we've got them recorded. We'll then move to the judges' deliberation, as I say, for about 50 minutes. And whilst we're doing that, as I'll be talking to Archie Hesse. So just a very quick scene setting for the demos. 6 projects, 7 minutes, 5 minutes for judging. Sorry, I said 6 minutes. 5 minutes for judging. And the awards that the judges will be awarding today is the Breakthrough Award. So for the solution that is most ready for implementation and practical application. And obviously for MVP, there are solutions at different stages. So just to be aware of that. The Eureka Award. So thinking about the one that gets the judges most excited or surprises the judges due to its creativity. And then finally, the Jump Award. And this is the one with the greatest potential to transform the fight against digital payment fraud. So these awards are kind of created to allow the judging of different stage ideas and solutions. I'm going to move to the demo now, I think. Oh, no. So just a quick reminder of the problem statement and the use cases before we get started. So the problem statement for this was how can we combat and deter digital payment fraud in West Africa? So the aim is to build on existing ideas, MVPs or solutions, to develop functional prototypes or proof of concepts to address the problem statement and selected use cases. As I mentioned, I'll just quickly talk to the use cases. So consumer education and awareness. This is around how we can use technology to educate and empower users. Real-time transaction monitoring. How can product owners create cost-effective solutions that ensure ongoing fraud prevention and detection? And particularly in the context of West Africa, kind of during those system downtimes and off-peak hours when security is quite often compromised. We've got identity data management. So this is around managing identification data across different institutions and enhancing data quality, accessibility and security. Centralized fraud intelligence sharing, so how we facilitate the active sharing of real-time data and intelligence across different sectors, something that we've spoken about already today, and how we can ensure its compatibility and interoperability amongst the diverse tech systems. Then market monitoring. So this is more around how regulators might leverage advanced technologies to develop low-cost subtech solutions. We do have some regulators who have been joining us along our journey this week from West Africa, and hopefully they're kind of picking up on some ideas around how they might better monitor their data, and therefore understand the risks of payment frauds and harms. And then finally, as mentioned, and one that comes up time and time again, is around gender disaggregated data. So one of the things that we found when we was working through this tech sprint is that there isn't much at all in terms of gender disaggregated data, and so it's therefore very hard to understand the specific harms that women face, and therefore the solutions that might address those. With just a quick update on kind of who's been working this week. So we've had 20 sprinters across 6 teams. There have been 4 countries. So we've had Gambia, Ghana, Nigeria, and the UK. And as I mentioned before, there's been a bit of a community that sat behind this. So alongside our wonderful AIR team, we've had NayaOne, who provide the TechSprint platform, Tazama, which is an open source tool, and the team have been supporting our sprinters both in floating expert side, but also by providing the open source tool and the technical details that sit behind that, so that the teams have had access to be able to use that over the week. We've had data support, so NayaOne, and also the Makerere University, who kindly provided, some of their PhD students kindly provided some data sets that we were able to use, that they'd built some open source data sets. So that was wonderful. And then finally, as I mentioned, our 15 floating experts, just, people that we've spoken to over the last few months who have shown a real interest in helping the teams, and also moving the dial on the challenge itself. And they've been readily available for the teams and helping them kind of move through. So at a glance, as you can see, this was the week. Solution building, lots of daily scrums. We've had preparation sessions. And then, as I say, yesterday we recorded the demos. And here we are today on the demo day and the fireside chat. An introduction to our judges. So Grace Mathebula, who is my wonderful colleague at AIR, is going to be the chairperson for the judges today and make sure that we come to a decision on each of those awards. We've got Dr. Patrick Conteh, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the African Fintech Network. Lovelyn Okafor, who's Director of Programs for the Consumer Advocacy and Empowerment Foundation. Chiderah Ikeokonkwo, who is Chief Legal Officer at Banksford Technologies. Gabriel Ruhan, Chief Executive Officer of Paycode. And Ridwan Olalere, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Lemonade Finance. So just a real big thank you to our judges for joining us today, and I'm sure for the great questions that they'll ask. This is the judging criteria, just so that you know kind of what they're thinking about. So things like the value for the end user, value for the customer, implementation and cost effectiveness, novelty and innovation, and then a little bit in terms of the demo and presentation and how well they've kind of conveyed their solution. And this will be the order. We're going to do A&D forensics, then global code, then product detect. We'll have a little bit of a break for everyone just to take a bit of a comfort break. And we'll come back and hear from Silver Sands, 010 Technologies, and 1% Lab. And as I say, in between those, we will have time for the judges to ask some questions. So without further ado, I am going to share the demo day videos, and we will get started.
Hello everyone, My name is Choma Lekelu from A&D Forensics, and with me I have Abdulhafiz Ibrahim, who is also my colleague, and who will be doing a presentation on CAS by A&D Forensics. CAS is a streamlined, cost-effective crypto compliance solution for Web3 startups. So it's actually an idea and a product from A&D Forensics, and it's to assemble all the requirements that a Web3 startup needs to have a simple, effective, and cost-effective, affordable compliance program. So we realized during our journey that compliances are expensive for the founders, and they will need to subscribe to more than one tool to actually fight fraud within their platforms. And some of them do not even understand compliance or what they need to do to fight fraud. So we took up that challenge and we said, okay, this is what will happen. You can come to a platform, use our automated crypto compliance to stay ahead of sanction rules, monitor suspicious transaction and fraud activities, and also have your compliance in check. And then we have services like KYC and identity verification, wallet screening, transaction monitoring, and we also offer consultation service on how to build an AML compliance program in case they don't know how to do that. And we're also encouraging them through our platform to be FATF travel rule compliant. And then we are targeting the Web3 platforms, the founders, the OTC traders, and then the regulators in our version 2, because they need visibility to also know what these platforms are doing to be able to supervise them. And we are African partners with Chainalysis, big firms like Chainalysis, blockchain firms, blockchain intelligence group, Coin Firm, Crystal Intelligence, and we are the only African members of Crypto Market Integrity Coalition, CMISG. We work closely with our regulators in Africa like CBN, NFIU, SEC, FRC in Kenya, as well as in Ghana as well, because we also have presence there. And then we intend to use this as our marketing strategy, digital marketing and all. And these are our team members, Mr. Dedeji, myself, Choma, Abdulhafiz, and Mr. Oyoyo. So I'll go straight to showing you what our platform looks like. So this is a prototype of our platform. You can see this is the dashboard, avoid regulatory pitfalls and fraud with CAS. And you can see some of our partners already listed here. You can go through down to see how the platform is. And then I'm going to be showing two particular services that are related to fighting fraud. I will start with, so we have the premium plan, which reminds me to say that our service is tiered into different tiers, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. So you can start from tier 1 and build and grow as your business is expanding. So for instance, we have these services, and let's say the identity verification, for instance, you can come to check your name for people in Nigeria. And when you check your name, you would have a result displayed for you, the details of the person, you confirm with what the person has given to you. You can also decide to check international passport, of course, for citizens that are not Nigerians. You can as well have the liberty to check for international passport. And then when you check, you see the result displayed for you, details of the person as well. And you can also go for liveness check. And when you fill the form, you can generate a link. So let's say an OTC trader that doesn't have a platform can use our service, right? Generate a link and send to the individual that he or she wants to onboard to use our platform. So this is the liveness check. So you imagine you have sent a link to your customer. Your customer goes to do this, to be able to upload the probably driver's license, have to upload some documents, okay? And then he says, I'm ready. So this is the instruction. You follow the instruction, and then congratulations, you have done your liveness check successfully. And the compliance officer that actually needs that data can come back to the platform and see a successful liveness check that has been done, which is this is the sample. Okay, so we'll go back to another service, which is transaction monitoring service. For transaction monitoring, you need to monitor the transaction of the client. And like I said before, FATF has recommended a risk-based approach. So they can actually set their thresholds here themselves. You can come to the rule book and set it. So you can create a transaction like this, and when the transaction is created, now the compliance officer has the liberty to either approve or reject or probably penned a transaction for further review, or probably download it to the system. And lastly, we have the compliance review platform side for the compliance officer to check for the services that he has checked before, for the records. Let's say he has screened some wallets, and when you come here, this one that was successful, you can just come, view details, you see the result of what you have done before. You can actually have it recorded for record keeping purpose and for compliance purpose. Thank you. So that's all about our service. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to ask the judges to join us now, and also the team. Have we got everyone online?
Yeah, I'm online. Patrick is here.
I'm here, Grace.
Check. Hi, Grace.
Yeah, I'm here.
Excellent. Do we have the team on to answer questions?
Yeah, I'm also here, Grace. This is Lovelyn. It was good listening to the presenter, but she didn't say anything about the cost implications of this platform, how scalable it is, and how affordable is it for users to be able to, access and maximize the use of the platform.
Thank you. Do we have anyone from the team that can respond to that?
Yes. Can you all hear me? Good afternoon.
Yes, we can.
Okay. With respect to cost effectiveness, what we have done is most users or most clients combine all those tools from the partners we've showed you earlier, and they are very costly. So what we have done is we've negotiated with these partners, and they have reduced the costing for, let's say, individual clients that will come to them. So as our partners, they give us reduced pricing, and we have also carried out like a demographic assessment of our clients to see what is obtainable by them. So that knowledge, of course, we go back to our partners and also try to negotiate down the costing, making it affordable for our clients. Yeah.
Thank you.
Can
Alright, so I have a question. Can you hear me?
Okay, that's fine.
Yes.
I'll go after you.
So during your presentation, it's quite obvious that your system will be processing quite a number of personal data, specifically sensitive data, which has to do with financial data. And your system will also be processing or would rather be collecting information such as identity documents of your users. So the question is, what do you have in place to ensure the protection of that data?
Okay, thank you for the question. So implementing the system, we make sure that every data stored or that's in transit is encrypted. So no matter what, if, let's say, for example, a traffic is intercepted by a bad actor, the data will be useless to them. They will not be able to use of it because it's encrypted using a high secured algorithm. So we put all these measures in place to make sure that users' data are protected. I don't know if that answers your question.
Okay, so I also noticed that as part of your regulators, you mentioned quite a number of regulators, which I agree are applicable to that industry, but I didn't see any regulator regarding personal data protection. And so, how do you intend to address the regulatory concerns around personal data protection, and as well as the risk management?
Okay, thank you. So we are working on a version 2 of the product where we'll be having a regulator dashboard such that they will have whenever there is need, they will have a view into the system, making us compliant to regulations.
And from me here, I don't know whether I missed it out. Any comments on offline capability of the platform?
Sorry, come again?
Potential offline capability. I mean, assume the user is in a remote area where there's difficulty with the internet.
Okay, offline capability.
Yes.
For now, there is no offline capability. A user will have to have an internet access to be able to use the system. Hopefully, we can implement that in the future, but for now, it requires internet access. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I've got a question, and it's really around how does your solution, how is it different to others in the market out there? What is the differentiator between what you're offering and what is already there?
Okay, thank you for the question. So the major difference between our solution and other products, ours is aggregating multiple providers, leveraging on the strength of these providers to provide our clients with quality and high solution, such that, like we explained before, the providers have their strengths. Some can provide certain solution while others can provide others. So aggregating all these solutions from these various providers give us an edge over others that are just leveraging on one of the providers. Thank you.
So if I get just to piggyback on that question, so your solution is as good as the different components you're bringing together, right? And as strong as those components. So you're essentially right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
And I'll go back to storage of data again. And you say it's encrypted in transit, but it's stored centrally, right?
Sorry, come again?
You said that the data is encrypted in transit. But when
Yes.
it's stored with you, is it stored centrally in the database in your infrastructure?
Yeah, so we leverage on API calls from our service providers, but then we ensure that when the data are coming through, they are not just coming in plain text that is visible to just anybody. And also, not all the
Oh, I think we've lost him.
Yeah, I've lost him.
Okay. Unfortunately, we're going to have to move on to give the other teams time. Thank you. Maybe if you get a connection, you can pop your answer into the chat and we'll share it with the judges.
Sorry, Grace, before we move on, what was the name of the team that just presented?
A&D forensics.
Questions if
A&D forensics. Okay.
Yes. I'm here to answer questions if his network is bad.
Okay. Thank you. We're going to move on. I think we're at time now for the questions for that team. So we're moving on to Global Code.
We are here to demo our solution, and we are from Global Code Ghana. For the use case for our solution, we focused on consumer education and awareness. Zainab is a 34-year-old shop owner in Lagos, Nigeria, that relies on mobile money for business transaction. But she faces challenges with fraud and financial literacy, and the languages most of the time she encounters on this mobile money platform are quite confusing. She receives a fake message about business promotion. This message asks for her mobile money login to claim a reward. Thinking this message from her mobile money provider, she sends the OTP. Because she wasn't financially literate enough, she sends the OTP to the scammer and her account got drained, which was a sad scenario in this case. How do we solve this problem? How do we educate users to become more financially literate and be aware of scams? So we thought about creating a modal, a modal that shows security tips and questions. So if for clarity, the modal is more like a pop-up dialogue that shows security tips. We also want to test if the users truly understand the tips we laid out there. So we also added interactive pop-up quiz, which is like some questions the user will have to answer to get some questions the user will have to answer to know if they actually understand what they've read. The security tips model is more like a dependency. So integrating it with other web application will be seamless because it's more like a dependency. Let me say, for example, you have an existing project that you're currently working on, or you just need to do is to add dependency and add a particular component, and that's it. The model starts working for you on your application. The security tips as well. Currently, the security tips are hard-coded, but going forward, we are looking at making the project an open source project where we have where multiple institutions can make use of it, and also adding a JSON doc that has a comprehensive list of security tips.
Let's all imagine this hardworking farmer who lives in Ghana, and every time she tries, like she gets money on her Momo, she gets these scammers taking or debiting her accounts with some unknown transactions. So we propose a solution where we have a real-time monitoring feature, which can be mobile money systems can be onboarded on existing mobile money platforms. So basically, Ama would not have to download any other app on the existing platform. She can have access to this. We can just integrate this solution, gets integrated with it. So basically what Ama gets with this solution is that she gets real-time monitoring of the transactions that are going on. And the very good thing with this solution is that with the real-time monitoring, Ama gets instant notification if there's any unusual activity on her account. And with this notification, she receives an OTP to verify if she actually initiated this transaction. So this with this verification, we have more enhanced security for Ama's mobile money account, and she's also able to have visibility over everything that goes on. So basically how this works is that with the real-time monitoring let's say day-to-day activities or day-to-day transactions going on, when there's an unusual activity, she gets alert. If she initiated it, she approves it. If she didn't, she declines. And with that, the transaction doesn't go through based on depending or standing on her authorized her authorization. We plan on adding the AI-powered fraud detection. So tailored to Ama's activity on the platform, she gets tailored fraud detection or things that are pertaining to her activities, and any anomaly are detected early. And also, currently the platform's notification is on emails, but then in the future we plan to having an offline USSD notification for Ama to be able to get notified on time. Even when she's at the farm, she still gets notified even without internet. Currently, the demo is that of the back-end solution. So we've not yet integrated it with the front end. So basically, let's say I'm trying to initiate a new transaction here. So currently I'm saving everything here in the DB. So we have a number of transactions already existing on Ama's account, and he has a current she has a current account balance of 900. So looking at her usual account, her usual debit, she has like 10 CDs, 10 CDs, 10 CDs. But then immediately there's a debit of, let's say, 900 CDs. We are supposed to receive an alert. Yeah, so an OTP is sent to Ame's email. So yeah, the OTP I received on mine is 71057, and then let me confirm the count, the transaction ID is 6. So transaction ID is 6, sorry. So I have to verify the transaction, and once I verify the transaction, you'll see that the debit has been made because I approved the transaction on my end, since I'm the owner of the account. So any unscrupulous was the name or anomaly that is realized on this particular account is an email is sent to the owner of the account to be able to verify and then authorize the transaction to go through. So this is a basic demo of possibly how the solution is going to work. Thank you.
Okay, so that was our second team. If I can ask the team to join and come off mute, and if you can share and come onto camera as well, if you're able to with your bandwidth. And also judges, if you'd like to come onto camera, that would be great as well, so that our audience can see who's asking the question and see who's speaking. So just confirming, do we have the team on?
Yes,
online?
I'm here. Hello, Miss here.
Thank you. Judges, do you have any questions?
Yeah, well, thanks. Very, very insightful. You will agree this demo is focusing on, West Africa, where internet connectivity is still a major problem. Significant portion of the population live in rural settings. So why most of my questions will be about, offline capabilities. The Anna persona you created, assuming Anna goes to a village, in the course of that transaction happening, and she's off internet and the USSD, the offline capability is not yet a feature of this platform. Don't you think that's a major problem at this point in time? I think offline capability for solutions in West Africa should be core in any platform we're looking at. That is number one. Number two, the sort of accessibility by the regulatory authorities, how can that be facilitated via an API, or how will a typical regulator in Ghana, for instance, benefit from this? Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you very much for that question. So first of all, looking at what you initially mentioned is true. The USSD should have been core, but then pertaining to this hackathon, we actually built the system during the 1 week of the hackathon. We're looking to get a way to actually send USSD, but then it was taking some time. So for this particular presentation or demo, we just went ahead with the emailing, but then the core was to add or to use a USSD system, and that's why I added it as a future improvement. So maybe if this solution sits well with everyone, we can actually go ahead to implement this the USSD feature in no time, because the foundations or the fundamentals are there to be actually implemented into. And yes, this system would be available to regulators through API. So the APIs are there. We would have to add or maybe make some authorizations and maybe add some barriers and all that to be able to make it available to a particular or other regulators that will be interested. So basically that's it for.
Thank you. Has anyone else got any questions?
Yes. I have a question about the novelty. So just like Patrick said, we're assuming that this is in West Africa and the use case is in Ghana. Um, Here in Nigeria, I'm not sure how it is in Ghana, but this solution doesn't seem new to me. So what makes it so different from the present practice, whereby users get a notification for OTP, for most transactions, and also, what is the assumption, or you're working based on an assumption that let's say a transaction is initiated by someone posing to be the owner of the account, and when the transaction is being processed, the person then gets a notification to then say, do you want to agree or decline? Like, are you the one who initiated this transaction or not? So the point is, what makes this different from what is currently being used? Because this issue of having OTPs and using it to confirm transactions is not really new. Unless there's something new about your solution, I'm curious to know what is. And secondly, the first part of your presentation, you talked about consumer education and awareness, making use of a modal for security tips. In terms of the implementation, your plan is to integrate with other web applications. I'm just wondering, how feasible is that? So that means, are you selling your solution to other applications, as an add-on to their application? Why would, a web app developer, for instance, include your product on their products? What's the selling point, basically?
Okay, so taking the first question, I don't know how it's usually done in Nigeria, but then in Ghana, like the usual process, you are making your mobile money transaction, and for you to confirm, you put in your, I think the four security numbers to approve. But then what this solution seeks to serve is that usually, well, I didn't mention it. I think I didn't clearly state it in there, but then it has this unique feature where you can go through the normal process of being sent an OTP to approve, but then this particular system tracks the behavior of your debit, so the behavior of your expenses on the platform. So immediately it realizes that an unusual behavior is happening. So that's why I mentioned that. So usually debits 10 CDs, 5 CDs, 60 CDs, 70 CDs from her account. But immediately she tries to, or there's an initiated debit of 900 CDs. That's like that's very unusual of Ama to debit the amount of money just out of the blue. So immediately that's when we have this, let me put it, this method that is triggered to say that, okay, to flag the transaction to be a suspicious one. So that's where we send an OTP, like extra OTP to aside the one that the security tip or the security numbers or password that Ama has to do her day-to-day initiation of or approving of transactions. So the extra thing is that this particular system tracks the the debit behavior or expenses behavior of Ama, and then immediately flags a transaction whenever it senses or it sees that there is an unusual behavior on the platform. But then, yeah, that's how I know it's like that's how usually it's done in Ghana, but I don't know for Nigeria. Maybe it's an existing thing. Maybe after here would research more and add much more better features to it. So thank you for the point out here. And the second part, I think Daniel can speak more to that.
Okay, team, it's going to have to be a very short answer because we're at time for the questions. So if you've just got a very short answer, that would be great.
Okay, so with the fact that the system so that's why he made, I think he not I think, but then realized he mentioned that the system we're planning to make it open source, so it's not going to be it's going to be an awareness platform, more like an initiative where we open for other developers to be able to put in more questions or more tips for these systems. And it's just a dependency. So it doesn't really have like a profit-making point, because we want the platform or the notification or pop-up to be much used by many payment platforms, to be able to create a more awareness for their users on their platform, to be able to have good financial literacy as well as awareness when it comes to fraud and all that. So that's the little I think I can put to that question. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to move on to the next team now. Let's play.
Adama, team lead for ProDetect. We are building a smart AML transaction monitoring system for Africa. The problem we are solving is the conventional rule-based anti-money laundering systems used by financial service providers generate many alerts, 90% of which are false positives, leading to wasting of resources and missing out on actual fraud cases. Now, here is our typical user persona, Abdullahi Kamara. Abdullahi is a relationship manager at a mobile money operator, and currently he faces a number of challenges in his line of work. He currently lacks a centralized and real-time intelligence system to detect actual fraud cases. Secondly, due to their fragmented data and disconnected systems, it makes it challenging to track and manage actual fraud cases. And lastly, with their disconnected systems, it takes days and weeks before suspicious activities are detected and flagged. Now, the use case here is what Abdullahi wishes is he needs a smart system that reduces false positives. He also needs a system that will give him instant alerts when actual fraud cases happen. And he wished that he had an interface where he would manage each case and do additional investigation. And finally, reporting and filing of STRs and suspicious activity reports are manual. And he wished these are all available out of the box. That is why we built ProDetect, an anti-money laundering transaction monitoring system that reduces false positives by 60% and can adapt to evolving fraud patterns. Now, this is an overview of how we are leveraging Tazama rule-based engine to make it easier for Abdullahi. So a typical example is when a transaction is triggered from a financial service provider, it goes through the Tazama rule-based engine that does the analysis. Now, the evaluated results are relayed to our AI agent. And what it does, it looks at the evaluated results and determine if an alert should be sent in real time or not by comparing it to previous records. Now, with that alert sent, Abdullahi will be able to manage all cases and even do additional investigation from his user interface. I'll now take you through a demo of the product. One second. Okay, so this is the interface for Abdullahi. For him, I will just log in as Abdullahi with my password. That's the interface. Now log in. Okay, so typically this is Abdullahi's interface. Once he integrates this to his payment system, he'll be able to see the total the dashboard, giving him a snippet of everything happening in his infrastructure. You can see the total transaction. He'll be able to see the email alerts he's received, the attempted fraud, and he'll be able to see a graph of suspicious transactions against the generated alerts. down here, he will be able to see his latest alerts, and he'll be able to see the corresponding risk score of those transactions. Now, to see a full view of all the latest alerts, he will just go to the Alerts tab, and he will be able to see all the alerts. And once he wishes to look at a detailed view of all of this, he'll just be able to click it and do additional investigation. On top of that, we've also built a sanction check, where he will be able to check a customer's name against the numerous sanctions database we've also integrated. Let's say, for example, this is Mohammed, his client. You'll be able to put his name and be able to search against the database we've integrated. For transactions tab, you'll be able to see all his transactions and be able to do additional investigation, and similarly for the customers too. And lastly, we've added a reporting component where he will be able to file and report any STRs he wished to do. He will just be able to select the type of report he wants. Let's say it's a fraud report, and he will be able to generate a report with it. Basically, that's the overview of our system. For the settings tab, we understand that the Tazama rule-based engine is also inbuilt, but we've extended and added a feature for the rule system where Abdullah will be able to add and deactivate any rule as he wishes. I know that is part of Tazama's long-term vision. Back to my presentation. Now, this is an overview of a data flow, how Tazama and work hand in hand with ProDetect. Transactions flowing from the banking system goes to Tazama's rule-based engine. Let's say the transaction message does not conform with the ISO standard. We have a transformer inbuilt to change, to transform those. Now, from that, ProDetect fetches data, the evaluated results, and display it onto the interface. And our back-end AI agent does the real-time analysis of the results and send this into the interface. This is my team. Together, we have 2 decades of experience in financial technology in Africa, and we have built 3 fintech startups. We've also built other products within this space, and we are all alumni of the Meltwater Entrepreneurial School of Technology in Accra, Ghana. And that's the end of my presentation, and I want to thank you all.
Great, so that was ProDetect. If the team are on, if you can turn your cameras on and make yourself known, and same again from the judges. Can I just give a little reminder to the judges, we do only have 6 minutes for questions. So if you can try and keep your questions short to give the team enough time to respond. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Insightful one for young men coming together. Congratulations. My ask is, what informs your 60% threshold? You said your goal is to reduce false positive by 60%. What informs that threshold? Why 60%?
Do we have the ProDetect team on to answer questions? I'm not sure we do.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Oh, here we go. Yeah. Did you hear the question, or should we repeat it?
Yeah, I got that. Thank you very much for the question. So, for our 60% number, so, it's based on typical systems we currently use artificial intelligence, machine learning techniques to...
Not audible at all. I don't know whether it's me. I'm not getting him.
I can't hear him properly. Can you move closer to your phone?
Okay, am I clearer?
A little bit.
Yeah.
You're a bit muffled.
Okay, our 60% assumption is based on similar machine learning systems that currently analyze transactions and to help reduce false positives. So that's currently it's not backed by our own internal data. So it's based on several other systems that currently analyze transactions and reduce false positives.
Can I suggest that he probably types it in the chat as well, the answer? Maybe when we move on to other questions or other teams, I think that should probably be better.
Do the judges have any other questions, and we can ask him to respond in the chat whilst we move on?
Yeah, I'm interested in knowing more about the cost effectiveness of this solution, and also if he can identify who the consumer would be and who the end user would be.
Okay. If you can respond in the chat, and then we'll make sure the judges have that answer. Judges, anyone else got a question?
Yes, I'm wondering, are there other companies, are there other platforms that have similar ideas, or do they think theirs is different? Or, I mean, if there are people that already have such things going on, what makes theirs different? What makes theirs something that people would rather use instead of the existing ones? I mean, do they have any competitors already?
Okay, we'll make a note of that. I think we'll move on. I think that's enough questions to that's enough questions to get on with here. So we'll move on to the next team.
This is an MVP presentation of Silver Sands. Silver Sands is a team of Lillian and Abubakar Shehu. Basically, is a payment fraud solution. Current scenario in Nigeria, this is a current situation. The typical POS scene in Nigeria is where you have a customer not sure of charge for service, unaware, uninformed, and uneducated about the service, and usually unconfident of redress mechanisms or redress systems for poor service, and usually worry about data exposure. On the part of the agent, you can see the agent with the customer's card in hand, basically haggle for service charge, is not as informed, opportunistic, exploitative, and inadequate oversight, that is monitoring and supervision of the agent is inadequate. And this is what has given room for the exploitative and opportunistic stance that causes the agent to haggle service charge. Our solution seeks to get the customer to be assured of service charge, to be aware, informed, educated of service, confident of redress mechanism for poor service, and data protected or data protection is available. And on the part of the agent, there is fixed charge, and is aware of the fixed charge, is helpful, is supportive because of the redress mechanism that we propose to have in place based on our solution. And there is adequate oversight, that is monitoring and supervision of the agent is in place. And this is what will cause the agent not to be helpful and to be supportive and to be informed. This goes into the detail of the current situation of POS services in Nigeria, which has crowded out ATMs. ATMs are few and here and there in between in Nigeria, while POS are all over the place. This has affected financial inclusion, basically because of their excessive, arbitrary, and exploitative charges. Poor customer issue resolution and dispute management and support is usually lacking. and lack of customer awareness and poor customer engagement on the part of the agent, and then poor regulatory and compliance mechanism on the part of the regulator. Current situation also, there's inadequate monitoring, as I earlier said. Supervisory and control mechanism is also inadequate to ensure standards and compliance by the POS agents for redress of customer issue, and the lack of accountability. This is what has made the current situation to be exploitative and opportunistic for the agent, and leaving the customer stranded. Our objective, which is what I earlier pointed out, is to achieve a digital finance service standards, or for the digital finance industry, for standardized pricing charges. So usually what happens is that on ATM, there is standardized pricing. You go, you slot your card, the charges come in automatically. No need to charge by bargaining. The charge is fixed for transaction bans. And this is what we think should happen for POS too in Nigeria. Also here, partnership and alliance with stakeholders to deliver these TFS standards. So to be able to deliver this POS standard, basically our objective is to see the regulator coming with service charge bands, one, and this can happen with proper engagement with regulator. Our steps for this is basically designed patch updates. So this patch will clearly be delivered to all the POSs in Nigeria once they log on. The patch will seek to provide standardization. It will also help customers to validate or confirm transaction through notification. Currently, notification is about balance. So now it will also include option for customers to respond. And these responses will go to CBN, CPC, and the Financial Institution and Consumer Protection Commission of Nigeria. And then finally, the responses will aid monitoring and action by the financial institutions concerned and by the CBN, that is the Digital Finance Inclusion Service Department of CBN, through monitoring and inspection of the responses. Where responses are acutely, exceptionally variance for a particular institution on a particular period. It could be a day, it could be a week, it could be a month, to ensure that the institution is doing what it should do to ensure awareness, to ensure compliance, to ensure education and adherence to rules. And it could even mean sanctioning, it could mean penalties, and it could also mean redress. And it could be as sanctioned by the regulator to say service charge should be within this band. There should be a module for educating customers. And then once that is agreed, it will be deployed by the financial institutions. And these patches can be latched on by every machine that is logged on. And then automatically the new standards will be all over the place in Nigeria. Currently, that's not the case because no such patch update is delivered, because there is no fixed charge, there is no clear education module on empowering customers on services. There should be minimum education standards, minimum awareness standards for all services, and service redress mechanisms for customers. Thank you.
That's wonderful. So judges, if you can join us again. Have we got the team on the line as well? And I think there's been a bit of an issue with connectivity.
Yeah,
got the team?
are they there? Is the team there?
Yes,
they're
please.
here.
Okay, great. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I hope my understanding of your application is right. My understanding is this. The problem here is about lack of standardization when it comes to POS charges in the Nigerian market, which is rightly so from my understanding of the market. So it's not so much about fraud in the ecosystem. It's about the fact that if you go from one local market to the other for the same set of transactions, potentially as the end user, you could be subject to two different charges depending on one. I think the constraints, as I understand them, number one is connectivity issues. There's often connectivity problems. And most fundamentally, is because of the scarcity of cash. Because cash is scarce in the Nigerian markets, there is all sort of arbitrage, right? People go to banks, they get cash from the back end, they trade cash with POS operators, with market women. So those are the problems. So in summary, your focus is on addressing that, not so much about fraud in the ecosystem. Am I right?
Good afternoon. I think you are right, but only half correct.
Okay.
You are only half correct. If you look at it, essentially, arbitrary pricing that is exploitative and opportunistic is essentially fraud. And if we agree that arbitrary, opportunistic, and exploitative pricing is essentially fraud, then there should be a need for addressing that. It is essentially fraud. And it is fraud, especially when you look at the after effect on the end user. So it is essentially fraud. That is one. Two, it is also fraud. I will also call it an economic fraud. You mentioned cash scarcity. It's worse than fraud, actually, if you actually want to look at it critically. The objective of the Nigerian government is to ensure that we have a cash-light economy. I don't even want to say cashless. Is to have a cash-light economy. The current setting of POS operation in Nigeria will never enable that unless we have standards. And the lack of standard means the government objective will continually be sabotaged. So it is essentially fraud, and it has to be treated as such if we really have to deal with it properly. It is beyond the issue of pricing. Thank you.
I could just come back. Your arguments are very compelling, but then we really need to look at the triggers here. I keep saying, if my understanding of the Nigerian market is right, a compelling factor in the issue about the sort of arbitrary charges on POS is the fact that connectivity is a problem. So the question is that the problem of the POS agent? Is that the problem of the service providers? Is that the problem of the government? So where do we apportion the blame? Two, as I said, who is responsible if there is scarcity of notes in the market? The end user, the POS, the regulator? Your arguments are tenable. I'm just broadening the base here, looking at the solution. So let me stop there.
Could I respond to you, or maybe I come back to responding to you?
I'm just wondering if any other judges have got questions rather than have this discussion. I think the team's responded.
Excellent. Thank you.
I think what's being advocated is regulation around pricing, but as far as I know, there isn't a central network of POS devices that they don't all connect to the same place. So I don't understand the patch update. I understand you're advocating for regulation, but each of those POSs are controlled by the institution that put them there, whether it's a fintech or a bank or whomever. And the pricing is controlled by them rather than by any central network.
You're on mute, Abubakar.
Yes, I didn't get the question.
I guess it wasn't really a question. It was, I understand that you're advocating for government or central bank set charging, but I don't see the solution.
Okay, what we are advocating is standardized charging. So where CBN comes with a policy on standardized charging for services, all services at POS points, This could be adopted by all the financial institutions and delivered as patches to their system. You rightly said that they are all different and not connected. But again, all responses, for instance, currently as we have it, is that whichever financial institution you are transacting with, you get your notification balance through your maybe email or phone number. Now, the same can be configured such that the response can go to a common database, such that you can create a common repository irrespective of the financial institution. It could be as simple as a USSD that they all go to. It could be as simple as that. And once they get to there, you have a repository of all I would say responses to the options that customers respond to. So for instance, you get a balance notification. You could just give a response back to say properly served, assuming it is on service standards, properly served. Assuming it's on you feel that you've been exploited based on exploitative charges, which we think is fraud. And we know it's fraud. You could respond exploitatively charged. It doesn't make sense in Nigeria, actually, for you to want to withdraw 1,000 naira and somebody is charging you 100 naira and is saying it's because of cash shortage. I mean, accessing your cash, to pay 10% to access your cash. I don't think there is so much cash shortage in Nigeria for you to pay 10% to access your money. I understand the first judge that said, oh, problem of cash shortage. I don't think it's so bad, cash shortage, that anywhere in the world that for you to access your cash, you have to pay 10% of the charge. For you to access your cash, you have to pay 5% of the charge. I don't think it's that bad anywhere in Nigeria. And I think anybody out there on the street knows that. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to have to stop there. Thank you. I know that was a little bit of a different solution, thinking a lot more about the policy side of it as well. So thank you for your explanation and your very passionate stance on the detriment for consumers. So we're going to move to the next one now. We've got two left. Thank you everyone for bearing with us, and thank you judges for your questions. Let's move on.
ZNPay is basically a fintech product for entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are our major audience or major customers. And in the AIR TechSprint, the use case we are focusing on is real-time transaction monitoring. And the solution we are providing is we are developing an intelligent solution to detect and prevent fraudulent transactions in mobile money wallets in real time using artificial intelligence. The reason why we have to come up with this use case, this solution, is based on the NIPS report. According to the NIPS report in 2023, between the years of 2019 and 2023, they reported that Nigeria lost about 17.6 billion, which is about 496%. What's our solution? Number one, our solution is to prevent quick clearing of funds, quick clearing of fraudulent money through mobile money wallets. Number two is we want to put an end to failing of transactions through providing intuitive response to the user. And number three is we want to be able to track bad actors in the financial sector and quick reversal of hanging funds. In step one, to prevent a quick clearing of fraudulent money through mobile money wallets, our first step is to profile every account owner and determine their risk level. So we've categorized them at high risk, moderate risk, and low risk. So example of a high risk account owner could be a hotel, could be a car dealer, could be a real estate. Moderate risk could be just maybe a civil servant or somebody who is ready into business. While low risk could be students and then medium-sized farmers. And then we want to create an AI model to handle this. So the AI model will have to go through accounts and be able to profile these people, profile these account owners. Number two, we want to pull historical data of every transaction relating to a particular account. So in this case, we are using Tazama and then the AI to handle this. Inbound transaction based on transaction volume, we want to be able to say, okay, can this person, based on the average of transactions they have ever carried out, assuming somebody has the average transaction is about 1 million naira, and then suddenly the person is now doing a transaction of 1 billion, that should be suspicious. That should raise red flags. And then number three, we want to be able to predict users' transactions volume for both inbound and outbound, and then put a lane. A lane we are going to put is do not debit on that account if the account is not in good standing. An AI model is also going to do this. In our step two, we want to put an end to filling of transactions through providing intuitive response to the users. And how do we want to do this? We're doing this by, number one, provide the user with the feedback if the network of the receiving bank is down. So we want to be able to show that. So the user should not proceed with the transaction. Number two, we want to provide the user with the feedback as soon as the receiving bank has set the transaction. Currently, it's been saying transaction successful is not enough. So the sender should be informed that the money has been lodged into the receiver's account. So currently, MoneyPoint and OPay have a system whereby they are solving this problem. They want to also take it a step further. So instead of providing, you can provide a POS group, and then the OPay notification, we can also adopt that. They want to have a way to send text message to the sender and to the receiver. In as much as the receiver gets a text message of crediting from their bank, we want to also send them a message and say, somebody sent money to you from Pay. And then number three, we want to reverse the transaction. Every transaction that didn't go through within 5 minutes, if the receiving bank has not accepted the money. So we don't want to, we want to cut down all those delays so that people can be able to go about their business easily. Now, in our step three solution, which is like tracking bad actors in the financial sector and quick reversal of hanging funds, we want to be able to do proper KYC to be conducted and that will be handled by the compliance team. And then we also want to request for the account details of, assuming somebody gets an account at Pay, we want to be able to request for their other accounts and then keep track of those accounts to be able to determine transaction volumes and things they are doing. And then we want to also resolve every transaction dispute. In technology, issues can arise. In Nigeria, currently, it takes weeks and days, even sometimes months, to resolve transaction disputes. With Pay, we want that to be done within 24 hours. And we are planning to implement an automation to handle this. And then the key points I would want you guys to note is that transaction history data, example, the West African transaction and demographics data set, and the synthetic mobile money transaction data set will be used to train this AI model. The AI model will work in partnership with Tazama to detect and prevent fraudulent transactions.
1 minute left.
This AI model will be used to auto-generate various rules and topographics for Tazama. This is the major highlight for Pay. Tazama, the AI model, and Pay will interact with each other through an API. The goal is to process transactions within 3 seconds of interception and determine if it is genuine or fraudulent. We are focusing at the moment, we have not connected to the API yet, so we can be able to, so for us to be able to work on the bank transfer and the USSD. So at the moment, the solutions we are working on, first of all, the homepage, the homepage of the product is this. This is the homepage of the product. So, but we want everybody using the product via online should be able to have this embedded on their website. So this is the website interface you're working on. So we want a situation whereby when you input the credit card details and you send it, it should give you a response. So I'm just going to put demo data, which are not serious, just sketchy data. You send it, it should be able to give you the payment is successful or it's not. So that is where we are now. So what makes us unique? We are using Tazama, we're also using artificial intelligence, and we're following the product design approach. Product design approach is such that we have products in-house, and then we're integrating it into all those products. Then the project cost, from our estimation, we determined that it will cost us about 75 million to execute this project. And then the project timeline, the project should be live by July 2025. And then our target audience are registered businesses and unregistered businesses. And we are focusing on having at least 2 million transactions every month. We should total within 2 years, 100 million transactions. And then we have list of products that we are integrating: the online payment gateway, the card processing, and the point of sale services, and so forth.
Wonderful. Okay, so do we have the team on? Can you make yourself known if you're on?
Yes, 010 represented.
Great. Great to see you. Judges, do you have some questions?
Yes, thank you, 010. We heard you clearly. You made it very known that there are other platforms that provide the same offerings as you do. But I'm just wondering if there is anything that makes you different, or you acknowledge that you basically are providing the same thing as the other platforms are providing.
There is no fintech company in Nigeria using AI to detect fraud, to the best of my knowledge at the moment. We are the only people using that. And also, there is no fintech company, even banks in Nigeria at the moment using Tazama. At the moment, to the best of my knowledge, we are the only people working with Tazama and then using an AI to prevent fraud. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else got a question for the team?
Yes, I've got a question in terms of implementation related costs, the direct and indirect costs. Off the top of your head, what are the things that are required to get this implemented? If I was the end user and I wanted to implement the solution, what would I need?
Okay, in our cost breakdown, the direct costs, it will cost us, based on our budget, 75 million naira. That's if we go for a tier 2 microfinance bank license to put everything in place and to use our expertise and time and current resources, it will cost 75 million. But then if you want to go for a higher licensing with the CBN, it will cost up to about 10 billion if we are going for a national microfinance bank license. But at the moment, because we are using, we are leveraging on the license from 9 payment service bank, the cost is at 75 million. Thank you.
Thank you. Is the solution, is it like, would it be like a cloud-based implementation?
Yes, we are deploying everything. At the moment, it will interest you to know that 010 Technologies happens to be the first, we launched the first indigenous cloud service provision in Africa, 010 Cloud. So most of all our tech is deployed on 010 Cloud, and that's why the cost is not that high. We have the resources to back up the design. So we are training all our AI models on 010 Cloud. Every deployment we are doing in 010 Technologies is launched into 010 Cloud, and that's because it's the first in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions before we move to our final demo? No? Great. Well, thank you very much. Let's move on to the final one. Thank you, everyone.
All right, thank you.
Great. We're building Covenda AI, a B2B SaaS platform leveraging AI to automate and streamline and orchestrate tedious manual workflows in cybersecurity and fraud risk management. Africa is experiencing a significant rise in fraud rates, with an average annual growth of about 167%. Africa's surge in cyber attacks is the fastest increase globally, particularly notable in the financial and technology industries. With countries like Niger, alongside Angola and South Africa, which are outside this region, leading the continent with identity fraud, rates are exceeding 300% growth. Nigeria, Ghana, and Liberia are among the top 10 African countries, surprisingly with the highest rate of fraud, as reported by Business Insider just 2 days ago. So here are the use cases or the user personas that we've adapted for our solution. This is Amara. She's a financial regulator seeking optimized AI-driven solutions for advanced market monitoring and data analytics that can monitor the landscape and the fraud landscape in real time, not just provide data after the fact. She will come from our perspective in the subtech space. Whereas the other user persona from the RegTech space for us is Ofori. He's a mobile money relationship manager seeking real-time fraud intelligence so he can ensure that his high-net-worth clients and corporate accounts have a seamless experience using mobile money services. Now, for him, the lack of real-time fraud intelligence makes it quite difficult to detect payment fraud quickly. The use cases for this tech sprint that we've adapted to our solution is really focused in two elements. One is centralized market monitoring, the other being fraud intelligence sharing. It's on the back of that we've come up with this solution. But let me quickly just emphasize here that last year alone, the cost of cybercrime, including fraud, would have made it the third largest economy in the world, behind the US and China. Our solution is to automate the human workflows in fraud risk management. We want to launch a threat-focused solution that counters fraud and other kinds of cyber crimes and cyber attacks, powered by our innovative threat engineering and proprietary fraud risk algorithms. Our algorithms are patent-ready and we protect them as trade secrets. Now, unlike a co-pilot, an AI co-pilot, our technology eliminates the need for any kind of prompt engineering. We first generate artificial threat intelligence using our threat engineering technique, which does not require historical threat data from fraud events or any other kind of cyber attacks. And then our conversational workflow, I'm referring to the first step, in our process. That conversational workflow then guides the enterprise in determining and establishing its fraud risk profile within its payments business context. We will then verify in step 2 and step 3 the various evidence of anti-fraud controls that have been implemented, whether they're technical or whether these are non-technical controls that have been implemented. We'll do that using machine learning algorithms that we are developing to predict the enterprise-wide threat-based cyber and fraud risk landscape. Covenda AI will then help these businesses to orchestrate the necessary and also automate the necessary cybersecurity and anti-fraud response. There are a number of things that are different in what we're doing, and I would explain that during Q&A. But just to note, where we are generating artificial fraud intelligence is a bit of what we came into this tech sprint with. It's not completed yet, but that's really going to focus on the centralized fraud intelligence sharing. What we have made a lot of progress on in the last 48 hours, amazingly, and I'm going to be happy to show that to you, is in the area of market monitoring, how we're helping businesses to diagnose fraud threat or fraud risk in the context of their business, and a bit of how they can verify and validate the data that they provide into the system. But more in a minute on that. We will offer the solution as a software as a service or a SaaS platform targeted at chief information security officers, but also specifically at the fraud risk managers to help them to automate and enhance their workflows in fraud risk management to counter the surge in fraud and other cyber attacks. So with that, if I will just quickly switch over here, this is a very simple React app.
1 minute.
You log into that, anyone can log in with if you're based on Google platform or any other kind of solution. You set up the team for the organization over here. I'll skip a bunch of this to the really sweet part that talks about the diagnostics that we do. And that starts at this point where the individual is now then able to select what their top threats are. And these threats are the precursors to a cyber attack and to a fraud incident, which are now then exploited. Once the user goes through that selection, they are then presented with the option. So this part of the app isn't built yet, but this part, has been done. I'll pause this here, where what they've just gone through is a very quick threat analysis, where they've both been able to evaluate the likelihood and the impact of an attack to payments in the environment. And they're doing this from four perspectives: the customer, financial, their internal capacity, and also their various internal business processes perspective. And then from there, those evidence they will provide to the system as evidence of control of anti-fraud controls that have been implemented, whether they are non-technical like policy and procedures, or whether they're technical like in their transaction monitoring solutions. Those evidence will also then be inputted into the system. And this is just a quick mock-up of what that analysis would look like, or this is the result of that when we're looking at the configuration management of one of these solutions or controls that have been implemented into the system. So again, like I said, a very quick proof of concept, very simple React app. The backend of this is running on Python and Ruby on Rails. And then from there, the heart of what we are really focused on is this cyber risk or fraud risk landscape, which is where we get to show the enterprise the various threats, so the various indicators of compromise or the various threats in their environment that do lead to payment fraud or that contribute to payment fraud, so that they can now take a more agile approach in how they respond to dealing with those threats, whether it's to improve the controls, whether it's to bring in third parties to do things like pen testing or to validate the level of those controls that have been implemented, or whether it's for ongoing continuous monitoring of various fraud-related threats in the environment.
Okay, that was our last one. So are the team on to answer questions? And if so, come off mute and make yourself known. Do we have the team on?
Hey, everyone.
Oh, hey. Judges, do you have some questions for the final team?
So is it correct that you just that a corporate would use this tool once, or is there any sort of ongoing monitoring and advice that's coming out of it?
Yes, it is ongoing. So both the generation of threat intelligence is ongoing. And when the user goes through the entire system of the diagnosis, verification, and validation, you see where I described that there's further input back into our fraud intelligence system. So all the activities that's conducted as a response to fraud risk serves back as input into our generation engine to then improve or enhance the kinds of threat intelligence that we're able to provide. In addition, feedback that we get from fraud controls that have been implemented for the verification and validation engine, that information also feeds back into and to improve the quality of fraud intelligence that we're generating. And it's meant to be a continuous process.
As the corporate, I get one round of advice, and then do I get updated advice on additional threats that might have appeared?
Yes, it's a dynamic system, right? So the way we envision this works is all the various roles and responsibilities within the organization would be using the platform. So on an ongoing basis, like you show the part where I showed you the risk landscape, right? So when controls have been improved, the system will trigger back to repeat the verification and validation of those controls that have been implemented. When controls have been audited, for example, by the internal audit team, or if you engage an external assessor, that feedback is also provided into the system, which both enriches the threat intelligence generation, as well as subsequent verification and validation of ongoing controls. So that landscape is meant to be literally the dashboard that the fraud team and other parts of the business come to every day and can, in a real-time basis, see what's the current fraud risk landscape for the business.
Okay, thank you.
Judges, any other questions?
Yeah, I think I'm fine here.
Great. Anyone else? Okay.
Sorry, I've got a question here. In terms of implementation and cost effectiveness, how cost effectively for the average organization compared to other solutions out there?
Okay, yeah, so this is pretty cost effective. In the demo, I didn't go into what our pricing plans were. There for the Plus subscription, well, there's a free plan, and on the starter plan, companies get free access to the threat intelligence feeds. The reason we're doing that is because we believe that the more threat intelligence that we make available, the more we can protect the ecosystem. So that aspect of it is free. Where we then begin to charge is to do the analysis, so the diagnosis, verification, and validation. And for SMEs, so organizations who are under 100 employees, we charge $300 a month. Whereas for larger organizations above 300 employees, so your large enterprises, or for organizations who want to have multiple premium services, for example, the things we talk about, the threat, the risk prediction, that comes in at $1,003 on a monthly basis. In terms of comparison to what other competitors have, you really can do an apples to apples comparisons. And I would say the reason for that is a multiple folds. First, these other existing solutions, their threat intelligence is reactive. So they're responding to fraud incidents that have already occurred. Our algorithm does not require any kind of historical data. So we've developed an algorithm by which we can generate fraud intelligence without having to require any kind of historical data and this historical data is coming from fraud events. So that's one primary reason why you can't make that easy apples to apples comparison. On the other solutions that are focused on compliance, there are a number out there, and I saw some mentioned earlier. The huge challenge with that, in terms of if you now want to look at us from a price perspective as opposed to value, is we know that compliance is not resilient enough to respond to the evolving threat landscape. And how do we know this? Several organizations that have been hacked in recent times were all deemed compliant to various standards, whether PCI DSS, ISO, or what have you, right? So we know that compliance is just saying, have I checked all the boxes in this current state? As opposed to saying, how do I look at what can happen? And how do I prepare myself for what can happen? And that's what the risk management is about. So think about it as moving up the stack, the GRC stack, governance risk, GRC for fraud, so governance risk compliance, whereas we do need compliance, but we are operating at the risk management stack where we're saying, let's be predictive about what can happen. Let's not rely on what's already happened somewhere else, but prepare for things before they do, in fact, happen. And then also, let's not just check the boxes. Let's actually look at evidence of control implementation, use that with our threat intelligence information to predict what the risk could be, and then now optimize what security, fraud, audits, compliance, and other teams are now then doing, as opposed to where you have a flat or a top-down checklist, and you're checking all the boxes without any kind of prioritization as to what this fraud event, what risk that fraud event may represent to your specific business.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Well, that concludes our demo day for today. So thank you, judges, and thank you to the teams. This is difficult, and I think one of the things that I picked up on from a couple of the teams is, they've built these solutions in just 48 hours. Many came in without a fully built solution. So obviously there are solutions at different stages, but I think what's been really obvious throughout this whole sprint is the dedication and the kind of passion of these teams to try and change the current situation in West Africa. So I want to thank the teams again for their hard work this week and for taking time out to spend with us and think through some of these challenges. Judges, I'm going to let you go and have a little think about who you think will get those awards. Please do take a break as well. I know it's quite a long session to be sat in. we in the main room are also going to take just about a 5-minute break, just so that everyone can have a bit of a few moments to recoup. But if you are staying with us at the moment, we're going to, as I mentioned before, just replay the keynote speech from Aisha Ahmed earlier in the week. She spoke very passionately about the challenges that we're currently facing. And we're really keen for more people to hear what she's got to say. So I'm going to play that now, but if you do want to take a break, please do. And thanks again to our judges. Oh, sorry, just having some issues with sharing. Here we go. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you to Air for this opportunity to share my thoughts on this very, very important topic. Hello, everyone. I'm very honored to join you today as we kick off this very important tech sprint. Let me commend Air for this amazing idea, which would help us drive more collaboration and innovation to ensure responsible use of technology as we try to protect the financial system. In my brief keynote, I have a couple of minutes. I'd just like to share my reflections from my experiences, as Nick has mentioned, not just as a former regulator and policymaker, but also as someone that was a practitioner in the financial services industry, and of course, as a user of financial services as well. I'll center my conversation on how we can rethink a number of issues, collaboration, consumer empowerment, innovative regulation, etc., as we navigate this, fast evolving, ever-changing context of rising fraud and use of technology. So, as mentioned in the opening, digital financial services, DFS, is transforming financial inclusion in emerging economies like Nigeria. We're seeing a lot of growth and inclusion coming from this. I think this is reflected in the substantial and growing value of electronic transactions and the keen adoption of cryptocurrency on the continent. It's estimated that by 2030, 7 out of 10 payment transactions in Africa will be digital. That tells you that we haven't even scratched the surface in terms of the growth, that is still coming in terms of digital financial services. Now, this growth comes with vulnerability. According to NIBS, in 2023, digital channels accounted for 71% of payment fraud. And in particular, mobile channels were being increasingly targeted. And they are using social engineering tactics, exploiting human vulnerability. And the potential scale of what fraud could look like and the kinds of losses that could come from fraud can only be imagined when you look at the kind of growth we are projecting in the use of digital payments. Challenges with fraud include undermining public trust, as Nick has mentioned, exploiting low-income groups. There's a financial impact, an economic impact. There's a psychological impact that, is not often discussed, but also has real effects. And it also undermines financial intimidation because as people lose trust in the financial system, they tend to gravitate towards cash and stop using formal financial services. So addressing this issue is critical to sustain consumer confidence in the market, to continue to promote financial inclusion and retain the advantages we've had thus far, and to maintain financial stability. Success will depend on rethinking a number of things. And as I reflected on preparing for this conversation, I said to myself, issues around technology, consumer empowerment, regulation and collaboration within financial ecosystems still remain the critical levers for us to pull. So, technology. We are an informed audience, so we know that technology brings both opportunity and risk. Generative AI, for example, can help you enhance your fraud detection, but it also helps fraudsters, deploy cheaper, more sophisticated scams. I think technology is agnostic. Things like fraud, privacy issues, cyber threats, they are par for course. They are part of the territory if you're going to be adopting new technology. And I think as practitioners, as regulators, we should recognize that if tech is neutral, building innovative solutions should then have proactive safeguards within, since we recognize that tech is, agnostic and neutral. I'm very glad, and it's very positive development that banks have started to adopt tools like AI and, two-factor and multi-factor authentication, real-time financial monitoring, all of these things to strengthen their defenses. But it's interesting also that the fraudsters, are exploiting what I called human vulnerabilities, social engineering. And we've also seen an increasing incidence of employee-related fraud, which tells you that, fraud technology is not the entire problem, neither is it the only solution, and this is where consumers come in. For me, consumer protection and empowerment is a collective responsibility of the regulators, financial service providers, and the consumers themselves. Fraud is not just a tech issue, it's a human issue, requiring human solutions. Some of the examples I like around, say, financial literacy programs are initiatives like Kenya's Dial 333 campaign, which was created when there were a lot of fraudulent attempts trying to penetrate their mobile money accounts. Now, I love that campaign because it was a collaborative effort between the communications team, the Communications Commission, mobile telecoms companies like Safaricom, and they use a combination of technology like, text messages and also sort of rural engagement within rural areas to drive this message, to raise awareness about data protection and the kinds of social engineering methods that were being used to perpetrate the fraud. I'm very proud of that Nigerian banks are also organizing awareness campaigns. However, it's very important for us to sustain these efforts, expand them nationally, particularly to rural areas, and coordinate our consumer protection efforts. Regulation. I think regulation has been an important catalyst for financial inclusion, no doubt. Things like agent networks, tiered KYC, biometric verification, and initiatives like the Fraud Desk and the Nigerian Electronic Fraud Forum all helped to promote financial inclusion and protect against fraud. However, as the industry continues to evolve, regulators face complex choices: advancing financial inclusion or mitigating fraud. For example, if we overregulate financial systems, vulnerable populations are affected, services are not as seamless, and they're not likely to use them. However, we must also guard against using such financial inclusion channels like, say, tier 1 accounts and unregistered agents to perpetrate fraud. The solution is not more rules, but more openness, more co-creation between regulators, financial services providers, law enforcement, and other stakeholders. I think that kind of approach will balance inclusion and security while preserving and addressing. Global practice on collaboration has to be complete, inclusive, so it needs to include everyone. We're talking not just banks, not just fintech companies, not just technology providers, but say telecoms providers, law enforcement, I mentioned that before, regulators, policymakers, government people. And it has to be cross-sectoral. And whilst this is sort of an emerging, because I see in terms of the research, there are emerging platforms like this across the continent, we need to do more. A few recommendations here. Firstly, we need a national task force on fraud that would involve all of the stakeholders that I mentioned earlier. We can benefit from digitizing, the processes within the regulatory framework, because if you digitize processes within law enforcement and within regulators, there'll be less bureaucracy, there'll be more faster action when we have fraud alerts, which we do get across agencies and across jurisdictions, and it'll be easier to improve reporting. I think a third idea would be to centralize our fraud reporting. So we have good data collection today. Yes, we need to improve reporting levels across financial institutions and all types and all sizes of financial institutions. But I think a central fraud reporting platform that also allows the public to use that platform to report fraud would be the most beneficial for us. I quite like the UK's Action Fraud Portal, which is a central tool, and it is the only single reporting platform for data collection, for intelligence sharing, and that platform also helps drive more collaboration across all the users. So this ecosystem approach will allow us to build the resilience, and strengthen trust in the financial system. I think this is as I round up, I think this matter is so critical that it actually may warrant a more global response. Why do I say this? Financial inclusion underpins at least 5 SDGs. The no poverty, zero hunger, good health, gender equality, decent work SDGs at the minimum. Now, anything that threatens those, so digital payment fraud, can actually hamper global progress in this respect. Given the interconnectedness of the financial system, the global nature of fraud, and the escalating fraud threats that we expect, it may be time to consider a more global framework or platform for addressing this issue. Such an initiative would bring together governments, financial institutions, civil society, tech firms to advance this, creating a more inclusive and secure ecosystem. In summary, I think digital payment fraud impacts lives, livelihoods, and the financial system. The most vulnerable are some of those that actually need financial services the most, but actually disproportionately are at risk. Addressing this challenge would need a combination of, integrating advanced technology, regulatory frameworks, consumer awareness, collaboration. And as we begin this tech sprint, I want us to keep this in mind, and I want to encourage us all to, bring forward our great expertise, our innovative ideas, as we come up with, solutions that can strengthen our defenses against fraud. I'm very much looking forward to the in-person policy sprint in West Africa in 2025, where I know that some of the insights we'll gain from this week will be crucial, to drive a great conversation next year. I want to leave you in the very capable hands of Nick and the panel. And then
okay, I'm going to stop it there. That was, as I mentioned, from earlier this week. So Aisha was just talking about a panel that Nick expertly moderated on Monday. And just to remind everyone, all of the sessions are available on our website. So if you wasn't able to make it to that session or any of the other sessions through the week, then please do go onto the website and have a look at the sessions that were up. So we're going to move on to our fireside chat now. Unfortunately for us, Joanne Barefoot, our CEO, is unwell today. So she was hoping to talk to Archie Hesse, but unfortunately she cannot. So I'm going to try and fill her very large shoes as much as I can. And we're going to welcome Archie to join us. Just a reminder to everyone, if you're joining us or you've been on for a while, that the meeting is being recorded, and to keep your devices on mute at all times. If you do have any questions, then let us know, and the team will flag that. But please don't come off of mute while the speakers are talking. Archie, are you in the room? If you are, can you turn your camera on so that we can start moving? So I'm just going to quickly introduce Archie, and then we'll move on to hearing from him and his insights. So Archie is the CEO of the Ghana Interbank Payment and Settlement Systems Limited, so GIPS, similar to NIPS for those that are from the Nigeria region. It's wholly owned by the Bank of Ghana and was incorporated in 2007. Its mandate is to implement and manage interoperable payment system infrastructures for banks and for non-bank financial institutions in Ghana. Archie, are you online? Can you hear me? Okay. I think we're just having a little bit of trouble with connection. Whilst we're waiting for Archie, I will take a little bit of time just to reflect on some of the successes of the week. So as mentioned, it's been 5 days of the tech sprint, so the team's been working hard. There's been great energy and innovation, and as you have seen from the demos, the teams have built things from scratch, and they've really been thinking hard about the challenges and the consumers that will be impacted by bad actors in the system. We've had 6 teams, and as I mentioned, 15 experts behind the scenes. Across the week, we've had 6 sessions, and that's featured 26 speakers. So really a collective endeavour by everyone. I'd also like to mention the support that we've had, not just for this week, but actually starting all the way back in May, when we held 2 roundtables, one at the 3i Summit in Ghana and one at the RegTech Africa conference in Nigeria. And it was there that we really started to understand the challenges that we faced and that were being faced specifically in the West Africa region. Is that Archie? I can hear someone.
Okay, all right. I'm expecting the WhatsApp there. Okay. Thank you so much. Okay. Awesome. Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. Bye. Bye.
Archie, is that you? Are you online?
Hello.
Hi, Archie. Hello.
Hello. Hello.
Can you hear us okay?
Oh, sorry. Yes, I can now.
Great. Good to see you.
Good. Same here. Thank you.
I was just filling some time. That's okay. That's fine. It's good to see you, and thank you very much for joining us today. We're going to head straight in because I've been filling the time, and I'd much rather hear from you than any more hearing my own voice.
Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. And I think Victoria's got a slide that she's going to share that's going to give us an idea of the kind of GIPS timeline and the work that you've been doing over the last 15 years. So you've been on this journey since 2007, driving Ghana's transformation into an electronic payment society. Do you want to share some highlights of this journey and the kind of most significant challenges and opportunities that you've come across over those years?
Yeah, thank you very much, Shelley, for the opportunity. And yes, as you rightly indicated, our journey started in 2007. That was when GIPS was incorporated. GIPS is 100% owned by the central bank, as you rightly know, most central banks in the world, all central banks are responsible for payment systems. However, because of the way payment systems are evolving, a number of countries are now setting up a wholly owned subsidiary, either owned by the banks or, in our case, it's 100% owned by the central bank, to exclusively devote their time to the development of the payment systems in the country. So, for the sake of time, we had a very urgent need where majority of our banks, although we had 10 regions, they were in only 3 regions. And we had a very large unbanked. I'm sure you are aware that we had electricity challenges and connectivity challenges as well. So our first task was, what kind of payment platform do we need to address this issue, especially when we have 3/4 of the bankable population were not being given banking services. So with that in mind, we launched the eSwitch platform. The eSwitch is a biometric smart card, retail and payment smart card. And in order to be offered by, it was mandatory for all banks to issue. In order to secure one, you need any legal ID, or your fingerprints are taken and stored on the card, because most people didn't have the KYC required for bank accounts. So we had to use fingerprints, and it works in the opposite sense of bank accounts. It's a load and spend card, and in order to gain access to your funds, you present your fingerprint. And when there is a match between the fingerprint that you have presented and the card that you have inserted, then you are allowed to make all the various transactions. So that was the first thing we started in 2008. Then we moved on to modernize our clearinghouse between 2009 to 2011. We moved our check system to truncated. And before then, it took about 2 to 3 weeks before checks were cleared. But we modernize it so that when you present a check, it is scanned and brought to GIPS, and that's where the exchange happens. So as we speak in Ghana, checks are cleared same day or next day maximum. Express checks same day, standard checks next day. You have funds lodged in your bank account. We also, on the back of that, rolled out the automated clearinghouse. That's for bulk payments. Before then, when come payday, if you are not with your employer's bank, you receive your salaries a couple of days later. So the ACH direct credit addressed that particular issue, and it's heavily being used now for bulk payments. We do have the express, which is same day. Then we moved on to the standard. Next day again is effected. And quite recently, we have introduced the near real time, where payments are effected within 15 minutes. Bulk payments are effected within 15 minutes. We then moved on to introduce the automated direct debit for repetitive payments. So that was the bouquet of services for the clearinghouse. Then we said, right, we've done enough. Let's move on to the cards. Or when you have a bank card, they were all in silos. It was marked stripe. It wasn't safe, etc. So we started by connecting all the ATMs together so you can use each other's ATM, as well as POSs and as well as e-commerce. That improved things a bit. And following on from there, we realized that although we can use each other's ATM, the fraud increased because the cards that we had were still marked stripe. So we developed our own chip and pin local scheme, which we also christened GH Link, all in the spirit of reducing fraud within the ecosystem. And then we realized that the world was moving towards faster payments. We looked at what pertained in England. We look at what pertained in England. Sorry, we look at what pertained in England. You had faster pay. So we looked at that thing. Singapore had also implemented faster pay as well. So we also did the same. So transfers from one bank account to another became instant. From 2009, mobile money payments, and maybe you are not used to it, it's very much used in Africa, especially for the informal sector. But again, they were working in silos. So we interconnected the mobile money platforms as well, so you can move from one mobile money wallet to another. Bearing in mind that from 2016, you can move from one bank account to another. Then we interconnected the mobile money world to the bank world, so the informal can work with the formal sector. We also realized in 2018 that we've forgotten our last baby, which is eSwitch. We added it to the bouquet. So between eSwitch platform, the bank platform, as well as the mobile money platforms, you can interconnect each other. And we christened it the financial inclusion triangle. We then moved on, because of the cost of the point of sale in our country, we introduced the universal QR code as well. It's a cheaper way of paying. Payment is, our QR code is universal because you can link it to not just bank accounts, but you can also link it to mobile money wallets. And apart from the black and white bitmarks for smartphone users, there is a corresponding code underneath. So just in case you have a feature phone, you are also able to use it. So you're not limited to the fact that you don't have a smartphone. And our last products that we launched, Ghana Pay, was as a result of the fact that we realized that mobile money was offered mainly by the telcos and not the banks. And the banks also wanted to enter that space. So the banks asked GIPS, the national switch, to come up with a shared mobile money wallet platform on their behalf to have a one front in that regard, because it was obvious as well that bank account holders were in addition also using mobile money because it was convenient, it was very easy to use as opposed to. So that's what we have done now. And you are able to pull funds from your bank account into your mobile money wallet, and then you spend repetitively from there. And once it's finished, you replenish it and then you move on. So that has been our journey for the last 17 years, trying to modernize the payment system in Ghana. And it's incidentally, I'm also pleased to say that on the 22nd of October, we chalked 1 billion transactions for real-time transactions only. And we've also gone live to switch and process MasterCard and Visa cards transactions locally, as opposed to it leaving the shores of Ghana. Thank you.
Thank you, Archie. And I you know, the amount of innovation that you have brought over the years has been quite incredible. And I think, you know, many people on the call will recognize how you've evolved with technology. You mentioned quite a few different types of technology that you've brought in as you've been reacting to a market that's very fast moving. The other thing that you mentioned a couple of times was around silos. And I think this theme sort of sits across quite a few areas. And for me, one of the best tools for a bad actor is to be able to you know, squeeze through the gaps where there's silos and people are not talking to each other and not sharing information. So I'd just like to touch on the kind of role of intelligence sharing across institutions and kind of your views to what are currently the main barriers to achieving this, as we know these kind of silos do certainly exist at the moment.
Yeah, the silos in terms of it stems from the fact that before there wasn't an overarching body to organize everybody together. So if a bank wants to do anything, they go ahead and then once it's okay for their bank, they get it done for their customers. So let's take, for instance, if a bank wants to develop an EMV standard for their chip and pin, in Ghana, there is no need to reinvent the wheel. A national standard has been set. and it was taken care of by the national switch. So in the absence of an overarching body, an established overarching body, you will have these kind of silos being put in place. So it's like you traveling from A to B or so, and in order to get to a house within A or a house within B, you have to use the motorway. Then you get to the byways, etc. In the absence of motorways, everybody will be creating their own path between A and B. So you need someone to say that this is the motorway that you need to travel on, and then you can come off the motorway and take the various smaller roads to wherever you want to. So I think, yes, you need an overarching body that would be responsible, as we are, for the project management, the operations, and the promotions of the payment systems in Ghana. And that by itself has put everything in place. I recall in 2007, Fintech wasn't the in thing. Come 2009, 2011, we had a lot of Fintech springing up. And then by 2012, we realized that there was a need to come up with a regulation to regulate them, license them, and so on and so forth. And as we speak, we have 3 categories with permissible activities and requirements, etc. So you always, in the absence of a responsible body, you are bound to have these kind of silos and people moving in their own direction.
Very much so. The other thing that we have heard quite a lot this week from various speakers, and as I mentioned, the roundtables that we ran earlier in the year, is that you've got silo working, which is difficult, and as you say, people will fill the gaps if they're not there. But there's also gaps kind of appearing because there's not enough partnerships or collaborations. So I think there's a couple of examples that have been given over the week around regulatory bodies and central banks within the West Africa region working more closely together, the fintechs and the telcos working more closely with the regulator. Those kind of collaborations that will help identify any gaps in the system, but also move things forward in a way that makes sense for everyone. So you're not stifling competition and innovation, but you're also not harming consumers in the process. What kind of partnerships or collaborations do you see as kind of being key certainly in the near future as innovation accelerates at such a pace, but those ongoing collaborations that will help protect consumers in the long run?
To protect consumers, product development, we need to have quite a number of forums. If I recall, when we started in 2007, one of the first things we did was to visit countries that had national switches. So we visited Nigeria. Theirs is called NIPS. We visited the West African switch country zone, the West African switching zone. Theirs is called GMUMOA. We also, I think, went to South Africa, Banksev, and also went to Morocco. I think they had a Moroccan switch to see what was to understudy what they had done and why. It was very tedious, and from the learnings that we had, that was why we chalked the path that we have done now. We just recently finished a conference organized by Africa Nanda. I don't know if you are familiar with Africa Nanda, where there's an advocacy group they are championing inclusive instant payments and measuring the maturity level of instant payment in each country and coming out with a report and the report the report is launched in one of the African countries where all of us come together and we discuss. Now, we've just finished one today, actually, this morning. And the whole week has been very, very beneficial to all of us. We all know what pertains in other countries, what are the lessons learned, etc. And those who are about to start now will benefit more. So these kind of stakeholder engagement stakeholder engagement cannot be underestimated. Also, if you look at the evolution of payments, we have the clearinghouse, then we have the cards, and now we have instant payments, which is the in thing. When it comes to card payments, we had the support of, because Visa and MasterCard, those international schemes have been around for a while, they've managed to, the governance structure, the processes, procedures that governs the operations is fairly matured. Now, when we come to the real-time payments, it's not really mature because we don't have an overarching body or any interested party that says that instant payment is my thing, and therefore I'm looking at how issues governing real-time payments are done. We know England spent a lot of time when they implemented Faster Pay. ACI Well2 went to Singapore, they implemented it there. And the US, when they had to implement FedNow, they took a very long time. The judiciary had to look at it, all the various aspects of it. But who is really coming up with some of these processes that we can look at, share with us, etc.? There isn't any body of that sort. So I think, and payment systems is a very interesting area. There's no university in the world that you can go to and say that I've been there, I've come out, and I've learned about payment systems. You learn on the job. Everybody's learning on the job. So I think a lot of these stakeholder engagements within our region, out of our region, will be very, very helpful. There was this other body, I think the jury also, that looks after all domestic payments in the world. And I've been to one or two of them. And when you go there, you'll see what's happening. How is Troy faring in Turkey? How is Brazil, their ELO? How is it faring? And other, what do you call it, local card schemes. What are some of the issues that they are facing? They've all moved to contactless. Have they moved to virtual? What are some of the fraud associated to the various products? How are they able to handle their reconciliations? This kind of sharing can never be underestimated, because there's nowhere else that you can go and say that I have learned from. I know there's a Visa school and a MasterCard school, but when you go to these institutions, whatever you learn from there is very particular to their operations, and therefore we are all doing our best, and I think there's a need for a body that can come up and say that, look, let's see what we can do. If you look at even the EMV standard, who is responsible for EMV standard? What sort of countries are responsible for it? How do you handle it? You know, I know Europe is deciding whether to adopt the EMV or create one of their own. These are some of the things that we need a lot of formalized structure for the whole payment systems environment.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think you've picked up on some really key points there. In particular, the idea of knowledge sharing. And I think, I agree that without context, it's very difficult. There's not, a kind of plug and play version of this. And most countries have their own context and their own challenges. But I do think absolutely that sharing learnings along the way is important, and particularly as kind of new new players come into the market to be learning from
Mhm.
the mistakes
Each other.
or the challenges that others have had, so that they don't make the same
Precisely.
ones is really
Precisely.
important.
Precisely.
And I also really like the idea that we can, that there could be a forum or a body that kind of, formalizes that a little bit more. But I do think in the absence, organizations like Africa Nenda and hopefully AIR, with some of the conversations that we've had and some of the ecosystems we've brought together, and others across the ecosystem are trying to, informally bring together some of the players so that we can share those thoughts and ideas. And the challenge is as well that often not everyone gets brought to the table. So, you hear lots of voices, you get lots of regulators come together or fintechs come together. But I think that the more we can bring different voices together and those diverse voices from across the ecosystem together to look at the challenge from different angles, I think that's really important as well.
As well as users.
Absolutely. As well as users, I think they're the ones that quite often get left behind, aren't they? And
Precisely, yes.
the user-centric design of products.
Precisely,
yeah. No, I think they're great points. So just moving on, we've got a few minutes left, and I'd really like to hear kind of what your key priorities are for the next few years. Is there anything that in particular that you're focused on? Maybe it's a particular initiatives or technologies that you're kind of, and I know you've touched on a few already. And then just thinking about from, the point of view of the stakeholders involved, like what are the next best actions that they can take to really move the dial and protect consumers?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, if you look at the rollout of payment systems, we are not here just to roll out systems, but for it to be consumed by users. And once the systems are there, the next thing we need is education and awareness. Then how do we grow usage? What are the various products that we can add to it? One of the key points that came out in the last 3 days has been cost. Yes, it's good, but if I can use cash to perform a particular transaction, and it's not going to cost me anything, because most people don't cost the transport of going there, etc. If you want me now to transact instant, but in the electronic, it must be better. There must be value in it for me. So what are some of the measures that we need to put in place to ensure that the unit cost per transaction is at its lowest so that we can grow usage? So these are some of the things that we discuss very heavily. We also discussed the issue of fraud. Once you move away from physical cash into electronic payments, you've introduced a new type of fraud. You've moved away from the physical fraud to the digital fraud. So what are some of the things that we have to put in place apart from the technical measures that we take to reduce fraud? Again, education comes in. Change management also comes in, and all these things, once people lose confidence in it, that's it. They'll stop and go back to what they were using before. So anything that you need to do to ensure that confidence is maintained and they actually want it because it's making their life better. But you can imagine that in our part of the world, I've seen things that when I mention to you, you'll be surprised, where irrespective of you developing a chip and PIN card and giving someone a PIN number, which is supposed to be safe, so that to protect the person's money, there are individuals who would give an agent their PIN number for the agent to perform certain functions for them because they are not able to. these are some of the things that we are battling with here. I've seen instances where people actually scribe their PIN numbers next to a bank branch, and they always go there. So it might not happen in certain territories. Then in the electronic era as well, once they are looking at your transactions, etc., they are then using it to give you offer loans to you. So everything is micro loans, micro insurance, which means taking people's data, calling individuals. And then we have things that are coming like predatory lending and all those issues, pretend as if they are about to lend you money. You give them so much details. So it's introducing a whole host of fraud, which would undermine the confidence of the whole ecosystem. How is it being addressed? How are we addressing our issues? Some of them is peculiar with Ghana. Others are not. It may be peculiar with another country. But again, as I said from the beginning, Shelley, there's a need for us to have forums to discuss these things. And there's a need for us to educate and educate and educate. Education or financial education cannot be underestimated. I was actually in our mobile money solution, instead of having the funds in your current account, now we know you can have it in savings, and it's better. At least you gain interest for the amount that you keep in your wallet. Is that enough? Why can't they also participate in investments? So we are looking at instances where the micro or the informal sector as well come out with products where, if, for example, a unit investment figure is about $1,000, I don't have it, but we have about 20 people that we can come together and create something, and at least we can participate in the investment sector, and our returns is going to be more than savings. So these whole things, the idea is good, but how do you translate it into reality? Apart from the systems, there's education, etc., trust, and all those things that you need to, and even let people know how it works, and the fact that investment is better than savings, etc. So it's a long way to go. So I think education is going to play a very major role in the rollout environment, and then a lot of engagement for those of us who are providing the services for it to be consumed.
Yeah. And I think you've made a very, very good point there around trust, because I think recently we were looking at some stats around consumers who have used mobile money but actually no longer use mobile money. So quite often they got brought into the system, particularly around COVID, where there was a necessity for mobile money and digital payments. But actually, something's happened, or, they haven't had the trust in the system to keep using it. And you'd also talked about benefits, like, are they seeing the benefits required for them to take a risk in their view, and use these payments? And I think it's really hard once you start losing people's trust and people start moving back to cash and those kinds of things, to then move them into a space where you're saying, well, we have other products, and we really, you should have insurance and you should have investments. But that first step into digital payments and digital finance has been such a bad experience for them that they've retreated back, and therefore it's twice as hard for people to bring them into new products if the kind of, I call payments basic, because if it's that easy, but the first entry point is often payments for people, and if they don't have a good experience, then it can make it very difficult to convince them that they should be using other digital finance as well. So I think that they're really key, as you say, very key to this is around education, keeping trust, so ensuring a secure financial system, financial and payment system, and sharing those thoughts and ideas across the ecosystem, to ensure that we're making the most of others' experience. I'm just checking to see if the judges are back, because I think we're almost at time, Archie, and I
Right.
could talk all day about this. It's been
Precisely,
fascinating
yes.
to spend some time with you.
Thank you.
And I think you've echoed, as I say, you know, a lot of what we've heard this week, a lot of what our teams have been focused on, around securing a payment system that keeps the trust of consumers.
Precisely.
So I'm going to say thank you and
Thank
let you go back to your day. On behalf of AIR and our partners, we really appreciate you joining us today, and we look forward to more discussions with you in the future.
Thank you very much, Shelley and the team. Most grateful. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you.
And the program as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye.
So I think we should have the judges joining us soon with the announcements. But I just want to take a couple of minutes to reflect on the journey of this tech sprint and this program. We've been committed to trying to keep this momentum within West Africa. Archie just touched on some really key points that we, as an AIR team and our partners, have kind of been very focused on over the last few months, which is trying to create these moments where the ecosystem can come together, where people can share knowledge and understanding. And we've had, you know, from this week, we've had showcases where, you know, RegTechs and subtechs have shared their solutions that they're working in other areas, and thinking about how that might relate and translate to the West Africa context. We do need to foster more collaboration. I think it's key. I think it's always something that comes up, and you know, it's the only way I think that we'll move the dial on eradicating fraud, given the, you know, the speed and the speed of innovation. And as Aisha Ahmed said earlier this week, and as we heard in the replay today, combating fraud is truly one of the great financial access challenges of our time. So this is not just one of harm, but it's also, as Archie and I reflected on, a challenge to increase consumer inclusion. So I'd love to keep building on the partnerships, ideas, and energy sparked this week. I think we can make meaningful progress. I think Aisha mentioned that we're looking to do a policy sprint next year. And we do hope that some of you that have joined us at the Tech Sprint continue to stay engaged in the conversation, and then think about how we can, you know, look at the policy implications and the policy challenges that will enable better technology and innovation solutions like we've seen today. I am very excited to hand over now to Grace, who's going to share the judges' results. So Grace, are you back with us? We're very excited.
Yes, we're back, but I'm going to share the responsibility with the rest of my team. So before we do the announcements, we would like to just congratulate all of the teams for their work. We recognize that 1 week is not enough to do a lot, but we recognize that a lot was done in the week. And it was not easy. I think we struggled a bit on the awards because there was a lot of, we could see a lot came out of this. So we have come up to our conclusions, and I'm going to actually hand over to our first judge, who's going to hand over the, sorry, what's the first award? The Breakthrough Award. And I'm going to ask, who's going to give the Breakthrough Award again? Lovelyn to hand over the Breakthrough Award.
Thank you very much, Grace. I'm happy to be making this announcement because, yeah, we are delighted. We've heard every sprinter. We've heard all of the different sprinters that came to make their presentations. fantastic presentations, but yeah, we have to make a decision, which wasn't easy, like Grace already said. And now I'm going to be making the presentation of the Breakthrough Awards, and that's to the solution that had the approach that was most ready for implementation and had a practical application. And for this, we are delighted to announce that Global Code has won this award. And we were actually delighted, or we were excited to know that you thought about some of the things, especially thinking about consumers in underserved area. You thought about the values specifically for consumers and financial literacy. So yeah, we're happy to present these awards to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Lovelyn, and well done to Global Code for that. The next award that we'll be giving out is the Eureka Award, and I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Patrick Conteh to present this award.
Thank you. Thank you, Grace. Thank you, fellow judges. I need not add more to it. I think we've dealt with this thing fairly, objectively. A lot of great presentations, to be very honest. By the end of the day, this award goes to Silver Sands because they come with, again here, emphasis on customer's perspective. And in this instance, it's about price gouging or, basically profiteering, when it comes to charges in the provision of financial services in the Nigerian market. So we think they deserve this award, and congratulations to Silver Sands. Thank you.
Thank you. And then the final award, the announcement for that one will give to Chiderah, who's going to present the Jump Award. Over to you, Chiderah.
Okay. Thank you so much. I'm happy to present the Jump Award. The Jump Award, just for emphasis, is presented to the team who showed the greatest potential to transform the fight against payment fraud, and also whose technology, in our opinion, would enable a giant leap forward in combating and deterring payment fraud in Africa. And so it's my honor and privilege to present the Jump Award to 1% Labs. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's not to say that we did not see value in all the other presentations. It was a really tough one, but there has to be a winner at the end of the day, and these are the ones that we chose for this. So over to you, Shelley. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace, and thank you to our judges today. Well done to the teams that have got an award. As Grace said, please, if you didn't, we see your hard work, we see your dedication, and we see your passion. And we're really happy to continue to work with you to see where we can take some of these solutions. I'm going to wrap up for this tech sprint. Here on the screen, you'll see a QR code that will send you to the recordings for all the sessions this week. So if you haven't managed to hear from some of our speakers or seen our showcase, please do take a look at those. We've had some amazing speakers through the week. We've really been so honoured by the views and the sharing of knowledge and experience in the last few days, and I hope that there's something there that will inspire you all. I also want to say, just again, thank you to our delivery partners and collaborators. We just couldn't have done it without them. They've connected us to their networks. They've been very generous with their time and their knowledge. And I think as we've spoken about, a big theme that's coming out of this, without that collaboration and without working together, we're really not going to make a dent in the challenges of fraud. So thank you to all of these partners who have lent in and joined us in the last few months to deliver this tech sprint, and will continue to. I think I'll bring us to a close. As we've mentioned, this is not the end. We will be sharing more information about future endeavours. We want to keep this ecosystem together and think about how we can do more in this space as a collective. And we hope that next year we will see many of you either at our policy sprint or other events that we'll look to hold up next year. Thanks again to everyone. I do hope that you've enjoyed today, and please do reach out to the AIR team if you've got any comments or questions about the session, about the programme, or about future work. We really appreciate your time and efforts towards this. So thank you, everyone, and I hope to see you all soon.
Thank you.
Thank you all.